Chocolate tart. It's one of my favorite desserts to make. In this recipe, you'll learn how to make a great tart shell that can be used for lots of desserts, plus chocolate mousse that'll be the filling for the tart. We're going to start by making our tart shell. Start by whisking 180 grams of all-purpose flour with 45 grams of almond flour, and then add in 50 grams of powdered sugar and whisk until evenly combined. Now it's mixer time. We're going to use the paddle attachment to cream 110 grams of softened butter, which is 1 stick of butter, until it reaches the consistency of mayonnaise. You'll need to scrape down the sides of the mixer bowl a few times to make sure the butter is evenly creamed. Once you reach mayo consistency, add 50 grams of powdered sugar to this and keep mixing until it becomes light and fluffy. Now we're going to add the flour mixture to the butter, but we're going to do it in 2 parts to make sure it's better incorporated. So go ahead and pour some of that into it. Turn on your mixer to about a slow-medium speed for about 15-20 seconds so that gets blended in. Shut off the mixer and then pour in the remaining flour, and again mix this for about 15-20 seconds. At this point it's going to start looking like dry sand. That's when you know you need to stop and you're at the right texture. And then the last step is we're going to add 1 egg into the mix and mix this for about 30 seconds until you reach a nice smooth, consistent dough. Now scrape the dough out of the mixer bowl and put it onto a work surface and shape it into a flat disc about 1 inch in thickness and put it into a Ziploc bag or plastic wrap and then into the fridge for at least an hour to firm up before we roll it out. After about an hour, when it's firm but not hard as a rock, lightly flour your work surface and take the disc-shaped dough out of the Ziploc bag and then using a rolling pin, start to try rolling it out. If it seems it's too firm to roll, what you'll want to do is bang the dough with the rolling pin to soften it up. Kind of bang it from side to side, flip it over and keep banging it. Now depending on how firm it is, it might start to crack along the sides like mine did, but that's okay. Keep rolling it out and it'll all work out. Now to keep it from sticking to the surface in the rolling pin, you'll keep on lightly flouring it from time to time, but try not to use too much flour, because the more flour you use, the drier the dough is going to get. And if you have a dough scraper or a thin spatula, that'll help you scrape it up from the surface so you can keep flipping it over as you roll it out. You're going to keep rolling this until it reaches a thickness of just under 1/4 inch, as long as it's large enough to fit into your tart ring or pie dish. I like using a pastry ring for tarts because it's easier to remove the baked shell afterwards and slice it up, but you can use whatever you have. If you have a dish for pies, that works fine as well. Now after it's rolled out to the right size, go ahead and place the dough into your ring or dish and press it into the sides and the surface. If the dough tears while you're pressing it into the dish or while you're pushing it up against the sides, you should have a bit of excess dough left over as you rolled it out, and you can use that to patch up any gaps or tears. If you're using a pastry ring like I am here, you can use the rolling pin to trim off the excess dough by rolling it on top of the ring, and that'll cut off whatever's hanging off the edge nice and neatly. Now we're going to blind bake the tart shell, which just means we're baking it with nothing in it so the tart shell can reach maximum crispiness. Part of blind baking is laying down a sheet of parchment paper and weighing it down with uncooked rice or beans or something similar to that won't cook in the oven. What we're doing here is preventing the dough from puffing up from the bottom while it bakes, creating a bubble that you don't want. So once you're ready for blind baking, slide it into a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, you'll be able to feel that the dough has firmed up, but it hasn't quite reached the color of doneness yet. So carefully take it out of the oven and remove the parchment paper along with whatever was weighing it down. Hopefully you're smarter than me and used a piece of parchment paper larger than the shell. Otherwise, when you pull it out, some of the rice will spill out and then you're going to burn your fingers picking them out before putting the tart shell back into the oven, where it'll continue to bake for about 15 to 20 minutes until it's a nice golden brown. After you've taken the tart out of the oven, if you used a pastry ring like I did, carefully remove the ring and then set the shell aside while we prepare the chocolate filling. To start, we're going to melt butter and good quality dark chocolate. I like to use either 70% or 85% or even a combination, but it's up to you, whatever you prefer the most. For 1 tart, you're going to need 75 grams of butter and 150 grams of chocolate. We'll melt this in a double boiler, which is simply placing a heat-proof bowl with the butter and chocolate over a pot with boiling water over the stove. The steam from the water underneath the bowl from the pot is gently going to melt the chocolate, preventing it from burning. Once it's completely melted, remove the bowl from the pot underneath and set it aside, give it another couple stirs, and then on to the next step. Now back in our stand mixer, we're going to whip 3 egg whites with 2 tablespoons of sugar to stiff peaks. Stiff peaks is just a fancy way of saying whip the egg whites until when you pull the whisk out of the mixture, the whipped egg whites will form a point at the tip and won't drip off. By the time you're done whipping the egg whites, the chocolate mixture you set aside is probably cooled down enough, and we're going to add the 3 yolks from those 3 eggs that we separated into these. Drop the yolks into the chocolate mixture and stir vigorously. Hey, I think that's the first time I ever said that word out loud. So yeah, stir the yolks vigorously until you get a nice smooth base to our chocolate mousse. Now for the last step, we'll fold the whipped egg whites to our chocolate base. Because the base is still too thick to fold in the delicate egg whites, start by adding about 1/3 of the whipped egg whites to the chocolate base, and yeah, you guessed it, stir it vigorously until completely blended together. This will lighten the chocolate base enough so we can fold in the remaining egg whites to keep the mixture nice and airy. Folding is a term used when making something like a mousse or a souffle, where you're adding whipped egg whites onto a thicker base like the chocolate mixture we made, and then using a spatula, gently stir from underneath the mixture, pulling the thicker chocolate base on top of the whipped egg whites, and then going back underneath it, kind of in a circle. So watch in the video here as I do this over and over again. This is a crucial step to ensure that the whipped egg whites get mixed without breaking the airy structure that we've created when we blended it in the mixer. We're going to fold in the remaining egg whites in 2 parts. So after the first half of what was left from the egg whites is all mixed in, and there's very little white showing in the mixture, add the last half of the egg whites, and continue to fold until it's all nice and smooth with a single color of light brown. Congratulations, you've just made chocolate mousse. You can forget about this whole tart idea and just spoon the chocolate mousse into bowls and stick it in the fridge for a few hours and enjoy. It's a great dessert. Or go ahead and spread it into your finished tart shell and then bake that at 350 degrees for another 15 minutes. Now because of all the air that's been whipped into the egg whites and mixed into the chocolate, it's going to slightly rise in the oven, kind of like a souffle would. I'll save that for another video. I'll show you how you can do a really great souffle. But after this rises, it's going to start to fall as it cools down. So after 15 minutes, take it out of the oven, let it cool off a little bit, and then slice into it, and you'll be rewarded for all of your efforts. Well, that's it for this video. Hope you liked it, and as always, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to Food Porn Studios for more videos like this. See you next time.